Hello, everyone. This is Mike Doloff from Inflow. We are so happy to have you on today talking about conversation analytics. This topic is really for almost anybody in the organization. So whether you're in IT, you're part of the contact center, operations, quality assurance, you name it, this is a topic that has merit for you. We're going to dig into it and really get from the high level to tactical on what is conversation analytics and what does it look like and what can it do really quickly. So feel free to ask questions through the Q&A as we go. We'll record it, so if you've got any colleagues you'd like to share with, we'll get a link out to you. So by way of quick announcement too, we've got some great upcoming webinars. Take a look at those. If you're a support customer, we've done a lot of enhancements to our portal and accessing support and managing cases in different ways. We want to help you, give you quick training on that. Analytics, huge topic. We got one on 12.12. And then also if you're an admin in IT for a short-tail MITEL system, talk about packet capturing, core part of troubleshooting and maintaining systems. So let's jump right in. Conversation analytics agenda is going to look like this. We'll do an introduction on myself and Chris, my co-host today. Talk about what is conversation analytics. That's not a phrase that probably has a lot of familiarity to everyone. We'll talk about common use cases, go into the data exploration, actually get really tactical here, show what this looks like, show what this means. Let's not make this be a theoretical discussion. Let's actually make this very hands-on and tactical. We'll talk about what's the gold mine here, what's the opportunity for organizations and for you to be able to tap in here. And then we'll have some Q&A time at the end and a wrap up. So jumping quite quickly into introductions, if you're not familiar with Inflow, just by way of a quick intro, we really bring the knowledge, the technologies, and the skills around unified communications and contact center solutions. And that's a narrow focus, if you will, but there's a lot of stuff in there, such as conversation analytics. So we bring that whole package, right, of knowing it, talking about it, presenting it, implementing it, supporting it, and all the pieces associated with that. And that's what we do for businesses all across the U.S. We've got 800 customers, most of them based in the U.S., but spread across the globe. We work with some key technology partners that you might be familiar with, short-tail MITEL, RingCentral, Genesys PureCloud, and many others as well. And just by way of some of the customers we work with, here are some of those customers. Many spread across verticals, different sizes. We typically work with kind of mid-size and above customers, and often ones that have contact center technologies or communication is certainly a critical part of their business, which is where conversation analytics really plays into how we help a lot of these organizations out. And I failed to introduce before I jump into what is conversation analytics. I have Chris Mitchell, our Chief Technology Officer, on with me presenting as well, and he'll be chiming in here in just a minute as we dive into the weeds. So, and I'm Mike Doloff, Chief Revenue Officer. So, conversation analytics, what the heck is that? So, conversation analytics is effectively taking call recordings, transcribing those, and then measuring those words and emotions that we get out of that. So it's effectively taking something that's unstructured data, right? A call recording, a WAV file, right? This recorded conversation, using natural language processing, right, to break that down into actual words and other components, other signals, emotion signals, and things like that. And then now we have a structured data set. Now we have something that's actually can be mined. We can apply AI, machine learning, and all these other tools and technologies and analysis to. And so I've put a couple pictures here to sort of represent that, right? So I got the call recording, the typical, if you're familiar with Q&A, familiar with pulling a recording to listen, whether it's ad hoc or regularly to sort of listen through and understand what's going on in a communication with the customer. And then, of course, turning that into actual dialogue, right? Understanding who's the client, who's the customer, who's the agent, who's the speaker, right, for the business. What are they saying? When are they saying it? What are they saying at what time? What specific words are being used? And then being able to do things like measure, right, and quantify a lot of these things. We care about certain words. We're trying to measure this or these groups of words as a part of their agent performance, the professionalism of them. Are they saying the greeting that we want? Are they asking the introduction question that we want? Rather than having to listen to and hear if they're saying that, we can actually have that surfaced up to us right away. So conversation analytics is a massively powerful way to get insight into these conversations that are happening all the time with businesses and customers, but we're not able to even look at a fraction of them until conversational analytics sort of entered the fray. So moving into the use cases of this, get your brain sort of thinking about what does it benefit a business? What is going on here? Obviously contact centers, right? Contact centers have evolved a ton. I think really from the back of the sort of in the dark behind the scenes to becoming front and center to part of a brand for a lot of companies, right, is their customer experience and how they engage. And that's a part of their brand and a part of their service and value. So certainly contact centers that interact with customers. You've got kind of tied with that, the customer experience side, right? A lot of there's this massive shift on NPS and voice of the customer and people trying to get feedback, right? Everywhere we go, we get SMS, how was your experience? Email, how was your experience? All these different ways where people are trying to gauge how was that experience for us. Well, a lot of companies have so much data on how their experiences with their conversations that with conversation analytics we could tap into and start understanding really what, like, okay, so people are giving us this score or that score, maybe we're getting a small percentage of response. We can get 100% of the understanding, though. We can really understand what that customer experience looks like. There's certainly use cases we've seen with organizations work with particular state, local, state, federal agencies that have compliance regulation they need to do, say certain things, not say certain things, to be able to quantify and make sure they're doing a good job of that, being able to look at 100% of the conversations and make sure their compliance and managing their risk in areas of things you should or should not say. Massive. There's no organizations that have to spend and hire, sort of contract labor to go in and listen to calls have had to do this in the past to verify compliance on certain topics that they're required to report on. All that can be easily automated and replaced, right? So they can shift those resources and that time into other areas. Obviously, other areas, this is really how Inflow as a company, I think, sort of got into conversational analytics was from a sales performance, right? Understanding how to understand more from our own internal sales team. How are we doing? What are conversations going on? How are they happening? And really be able to identify trends and themes. And someone who's doing something great, how do we replicate that, right? And what exactly are they saying in what order? Marketing, tons of feedback here that you're not having to go out and ask customers for. Passive feedback about products, about processes. So much in there that you can get to understand and shape how marketing's presenting things, how product, if there's breakdowns between product or service, all of that sort of insight can get surfaced up to marketing or other operational parts of the business that can take that and make actions on that. And then lastly, we see this over and over with organizations, especially with a tight labor market in the US, people and culture, right, and staffing and hiring. This is a big deal. Can you train your team more effectively? Can you understand where there's gaps in knowledge? It's really hard to do that, and that becomes something that a lot of people miss out on or don't invest in because it's hard. Conversation analytics can surface up a lot of that visibility into where are gaps, where are people struggling, where are people excelling that we can help copy to others, are people needing training in one area or another, all of those things. So the sort of summary of use cases, anywhere where voice data can give you insights into trends, opportunities, processes, performance, that's where conversation analytics helps an organization. So that's some use cases. Hopefully that starts painting a picture of where this fits and what it can do. I'm going to pass it over now to Chris to kind of dive into, let's make this more tactical. What are we talking about? It sounds like words right now, Mike. Bring it to more. So Chris, make this come to life, all right?
All right. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about the data. So we kind of break this down into two sections when we're talking about the data. Is we like to talk about what was said. That's what we're going to talk about first. Is on a conversation, we'd like to evaluate all of the phrases and words that were said on the call and start tagging those as either good words, bad words, neutral. So what you can see here is a screenshot of one of the setups that we say, okay, let's tag all of these different phrases. So we can tag individual words, we can tag phrases, we can tag greetings or closing. So if I wanted somebody to say, thank you for calling Inflow Communications, this is Chris, how may I help you? I can put that in as, as a phrase, and I can track how often people say that, or if you want people to thank customers before you hang up the call, thank you for calling, have a great day. We can put that in here, and we can really track what was said on the call and be able to auto score, agents based on, what they said or what they didn't say. Or maybe you want to track, if there's certain words you don't want agents to say, we can track that. So we can also track reasons for calling. Are they calling in? Are they saying, yeah, I need tech support, I need account maintenance, I need sales, and really figuring out, why are people calling in, and what are they, when they are talking to their agents, what are they saying? What I really like about
Real quick to add on that, Chris, I think that's awesome, because I think a lot of folks are used to in the call center the idea of wrap codes and reasons for calling and these types of things, but how accurate is that? Does that match what the reality of what people are saying? Are we just sort of getting lazy in what we're actually saying the call was about, or do we not have sufficient descriptors to measure that? I mean, there's a lot of cool things, right, of being able to actually understand and surface up what they're really calling about versus what did someone say they thought they were calling about. So
exactly, and that's the one thing I like about conversation analytics is it's fully customizable. Is we can take the work out, the manual work out of an agent or supervisor's, job, and we can automate that. So like Mike said, instead of requiring for an agent to say, oh, do a wrap-up code and tell me why they called for tech support, we can automate that and let the system tell us, why were the customers calling in. Or maybe your supervisors are still doing, they're doing manual scoring of agent calls. We can automate that and build in what your supervisors are looking for, on a call, and we can do automated agent call scoring, and then a supervisor can simply just look at an overview and be able to see, what that looks like. So flip to the next slide.
Yeah, real quick point on the quality assurance side of it is, I think sometimes people get the impression, this replaces my quality assurance. It doesn't, right? What it does, though, is gives you the visibility to 100% of the calls. And then now your quality assurance program, people, processes can focus on the ones that really now aren't a random sampling, but the ones that you want to focus on, the neutral calls, the exception calls, right? The positive calls, the negative calls. So really gives you visibility, sort of an X-ray vision into the whole spectrum of calls, and then you focus your effort into diving deeper and looking and analyzing some of the ones that really can make a difference, right? The ones that maybe are the bulk of the calls instead of an anomaly. So you're not trying to fix something that rarely happens. You're fixing something that can help 80% of calls, right? So anyways, on to the next slide.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I was going here is from a supervisor standpoint, instead of having supervisors maybe, listening in on, 30 or 40, percent of calls manually, they're able to jump into, into the dashboard and see that, this is just a list of a bunch of calls that they can filter down, and they can say, okay, show me calls where our agents are talking over the customer on a regular basis, because that's a training opportunity, for agents. Or show me calls where, an agent isn't, the clarity that they're talking, maybe they're mumbling, or not, their mic isn't close enough to the, to their mouth. We can look at the clarity and say, okay, great, this is an improvement area. We can look at the emotion of the agent and the client, and make sure that if a client's getting angry or something like that, how is our agent dealing with that? So from a supervisor level, this dashboard starts to really give us a understanding without having to listen to the calls. Great, they have the ability. I can click on any one of these calls and I can listen to that call, from beginning to end and see exactly, how it went. But these dashboards are really meant to give that visibility to the supervisors and even to the agents. If we want to give agents login so they can see how, track their own calls, we're able to track all this and then do the agent scoring here. So, so if we have a scoring system built up where, if a customer, they were angry, and then, and then you could see like someone would say improving, or positive, you can track on how your agents are doing with dealing with, adversity and stuff like that. And that's really important. You see the topic on this is how things were said. And that's where, the previous slide was talking about all the different words and everything that people do say. And this is tracking down is how, how are they saying them? Because I can say, hey, Mike, have a great day, but then if I change my tone on it, it may change the emotion around it. So we're really getting into how, agents and customers are saying words. And that's what I like about these dashboards is to really be able to see it in the high level, and then start to dive in from an agent level or maybe a department level, and be able to see more in depth. So when we're diving into, how things are said, we kind of have 4 different areas that we scored out the, the agent calls as they're coming in. So you see agent performance here. And this is a little bit different than if you're looking at your call center, or maybe your sales team performance, where it's all based off of how many calls did somebody take. This does show you the average number of scores and stuff on the calls on the left-hand side, so you can see how how we're scoring calls for the day. But we break it down in this one into 5 categories for agent performance. So we talk about professionalism. So professionalism, talks about how are they controlling the call? Are they is the customer controlling the call? If the customer's upset, is there empathy? Is there commitment to resolving the issue? When a customer complains, are they saying, hey, we appreciate your you being a customer, and I want to help you resolve this issue? So there's professionalism. You have communication skills. Communication skills, go into like active listening and positive words, responsiveness, knowledge transfer, around that. And you can see communication skills in some of the, takes up a good section, of the scoring system, that's set up. And you can set it up where active listening means we're not talking over the customers, and that's a scoring. They get 5 points or 10 points or whatever for active listening. You can kind of customize, and this does auto scoring. So then you can say, okay, any days that we're below 60, those are the days we need to, I need to dive into and see, what we can do to improve. So then you have compliance. Compliance, is, are we recording the calls? Is there, customer verification if we're, if we're dealing with finance stuff, when we grab the phone number, are we asking them back for, an address or a first name and a last name associated with the account, verifying birth dates, there's different things like that we can do to help with compliance purposes. Effectiveness is, is easy if, if we say we're going to, are we going to give them a call back if they say, they don't have time right now? So great, can we schedule a call back? Or are we offering them the best solution? Or maybe there's a product that we could recommend to the sale, that we work with the sales team to, to solve the issue. That's the effectiveness. And then politeness is obviously, is pretty easy. Are we doing our greeting and our closing correctly? If before we put them on hold, are we asking them, can we put you on hold? So there's a lot of around the agent performance. It's a lot different than what people in the past have thought about agent performance, where it's just, I answered 5 calls and I was presented 7 calls. Great. I answered the bulk of my calls, or what was my average talk time? We get away from that. We really say, are we taking care of the customer the way we should from a performance standpoint? So the next one we get into is call drivers. And this is great. This kind of goes into the wrap-up codes, that we talked about earlier. Is calls come in, is, what are the reasons, that they're calling in for? Are they calling in for account services, tech support, ordering, billing? We can customize these. We have 4, just kind of set up in our system, but we can customize these for all, for as many reasons as we want. So if you have different queues and stuff like that, we can customize those completely to figure out, are we transferring, calls between departments and stuff like that? We can figure out the call drivers and look at it, from a global level. So this is really nice to take that manual work out of your agent's hands and make it an automated process. So customer experience, this is typically, what most people are looking for when they're looking for conversation analytics. They're trying to enhance their customer experience, and that's the new, the new trend as far as what you're trying to do with your call center, your sales team, everybody is enhance the customer experience, because if a customer has a bad experience, they're going to find somebody else to do business with. So with customer experience, we can track customer effort. So are we escalating? Are we transferring? Offering callbacks and stuff like that. If it's a repeat caller, finding out who did you speak to last. It's really putting forth the effort. If a customer's calling back in, we want to make sure that we're resolving an issue or getting the information from the person they talked to previously, so they don't have to repeat themselves. If they are calling in multiple times, the negative experience and positive experiences, come into play a lot. And this is where the negative and positive experiences, we have a lot of the words in there for negative, any of the words that, around anger or broken promises, or apologies, that kind of stuff plays in. Positive experiences, anytime they're thanking us or saying, your team's amazing, you went above and beyond, all those words help us, tag positive experiences on the calls. You can see in most of these cases, the positive experiences, outweigh the, the negative experiences. That's what you're looking for, is to, to find a balance in that. And then for a lot of customers, cancellation risk. If you sell a monthly service or reoccurring service, the cancellation risk is huge, and you want to make sure that you're tracking those and and following up on what we can do better, in those cases. So if somebody says, yeah, I want to cancel, or I want to I'm going to stop payment, or not renew, all those different words that we can do for cancellation risk, can all be tagged in that, and you want that to be a very small section of it, and you can see for the most part it's pretty small as far as risk, and then in the call sample from from the past week that we pulled, or past month actually. So the last one is QA, quality assurance. So you can see here, we can track politeness. Obviously, that's similar to on the the customer experience, and an agent. We're tracking politeness in numerous cases. We want to make sure that the agents thanking somebody for calling, or using the client's name. That's important in a lot of cases, is make sure and use the client's first name when they're calling in. Professionalism, you saw professionalism earlier, on the agent performance as well. We track it from a quality assurance, to make sure that if there's different, we can track different words in professionalism for agent performance and for quality assurance, or we can track the same words in here. So if we want to make sure, that, the agent is controlling the call, or valuing the customer, that kind of stuff. And in the empathy, again, in a lot of cases is tied to professionalism in both sets. I really like the communication skill set, and you see this, this one and the politeness a lot of time are the biggest sections in here. But the communication skills really comes down to is, if you have younger, or newer employees, a lot of time, the communication skills, will be a little bit, lacking, in some cases. So we can use this to say, okay, are you giving the client options to their issues? Are we using positive words, on it? Are we informing our customers about issues that, that we've seen with other customers and stuff like that, and how do we respond? Are we doing a knowledge transfer? Those are huge communication skills that we really need to be able to pass on, to from agent to agent as we're training, so that the customer experience and quality assurance stays up. Compliance, very similar, you saw compliance before. This is just making sure we're tracking it from a quality assurance standpoint, that we don't have, we're not providing information to customers again. And effectiveness, so you'll see a lot of the different modules that you can use. Some supervisors would, might only use the call drivers and agent performance. Other ones might use the quality assurance instead. And they're, like I said, they're fully customizable, but it gives us the ability to really dive into, to figure out how our customers saying, the different words. If they say, you're great, that's pretty easy. But if there's, I've had this issue, 3 times, they can say it in a nice way or in an angry way. And that's really what, it goes into the effectiveness. Or are we offering, the best solution? Are we gathering facts? If a customer says, I've said that 3 times, that's a great, that's a great thing to tag as, okay, are we really being effective, is our communication skills where they need to be? Because the customer is saying, I've repeated this, I've already told this to another agent, I'm repeating myself, those kind of words. That's where we're not gathering the facts properly, or maybe we're not documenting, the process. So there's a lot of different ways that we can track the conversation analytics, and that's really what we're, I wanted to show here is it's customizable and it works for every different department. If it's a contact center, if it's a sales group, if it's, if it's just a regular, maybe accounting group who's taking calls, the conversation analytics can be used for any department inside the company. I want to flop to the next slide.
Yep. All right, I'll take it back over, Chris. So let's talk about the Goldmine, because I think let me switch over here real quick. What I think a lot of organizations are starting to realize with conversation analytics, there's a massive amount of untapped insight into what's going on with their staff, what's going on with, and how can they help them and empower them what's going on with their processes, what's going on with their product or service, what's going on with how their customer perceives their product or service. It's this massive amount. I like the little graph on the bottom left because, you know, we do QA and we grab a small sample of calls or communications. We do NPS and we get, you know, hopefully some small percentage of respondents that give us visibility into, you know, how they'd recommend our company. But then we have all these other, this massive amount of data that a lot of organizations are tapping into. That's the gold mine right there. There's so much potential within that. I think one of the things that we get, obviously working with a lot of IT professionals, a lot of times there's this fear of, oh man, there's this new technology, which means massive amount of undertaking to get it going, massive amount of not just that part, but I know a lot of IT leaders worry about, oh my gosh, it's one more thing that I've got to manage, right? Like my staff headcount isn't growing at the same rate the number of people and applications are having to support, right? We hear this all the time. The nice thing of conversation analytics is it really is the type of tool that goes into the hands of the departments and users that need to have it, and IT really doesn't do much from that standpoint, right? There's some setup and configuration, right, to make sure recordings are flowing, but from that point on, it's really, this is something that you put into the hands of your users to be able to analyze and mine that, and you step out of the way. So I think that's a big thing. There's not this ongoing burden with it. And so sort of the call to action on that part is, you know, it's a really sort of newer category within the last couple of years. And there's not this sort of defined, oh, there's always been conversation analytics and this is the person, Joe or Jane, handles that in our organization. So be the hero, be the Browns and says, wow, we can get insights for our business, or this is something that so-and-so or an organization could take and do something amazing. But be the hero that connects the dots, be the hero that does that, because there is so much to improve customer experience, improve your employee experience, improve processes, insights for marketing and operations, you name it, right? These cases we went there, be the person that connects your organization to tapping into the path forward into whatever the opportunity or pain is that you can solve. So real believe is something. Actually, sorry, Q&A before we get into that. So question.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, one question here is around. Yeah, Chris, you want to take that? Just to.
Yeah. So I got I got two questions here. I see it says, does conversation analytics work with on-prem systems or only cloud systems? So that's a great question. Is, you know, a lot of these products are designed, you know, we're designed around cloud systems, but they do work with on-prem systems as well. So the nice thing is that it takes a call recording and analyzes that call recording, so we can work with on-prem and cloud-based systems. So if you have an on-prem ShoreTel, great. We can upload call recordings, you know, from a variety of call recording platforms to a analytics, you know, platform, and let them analyze it and make it available to you. The other one I see is does the system have default templates, or do we have to build everything from scratch? That's a great question, because you could see all of the different reports and everything that went into it. And if you saw on the back end, there's a lot of words, you know, that we're tagging, you know, for each of those different modules and categories. So it has pre-built default templates, and a lot of time what we do is we'll roll out those templates that are pre-built for the agent performance, call drivers, customer experience, and QA, and then we'll do some light modification initially, like call drivers. We'll build in the different departments or queues that you have for call drivers, but then we'll kind of let it run for a week or two so the supervisors really get an idea of what's going on, and then we can customize those with industry words, you know, that you have, you know, or particular words, you know, like inflow, a lot of time gets tagged as in, and flow is two separate words, you know, so we can build in rules and stuff like that. So great questions, you know, that came in. I think we answered the other ones, Mike, that came in during the presentation. So
yeah, and thanks. I think that last one you touched on is really big. I think the conversation analytics, if you look at it, this is your first time seeing it, it can be like, wow, that could be daunting. I think the cool part, and that's kind of the call to action, and the next is see a demo, right? And like, see this. It's actually very accessible. Day one, right, you get insights and information, but definitely is there incremental value by tweaking and analyzing and measuring over time? Absolutely. but it's also not one of these things where you have to kind of move the mountain to start getting insights, right? You get some right away, and then you can tweak and personalize as you have bandwidth and desire to kind of drill down further into use cases, words, et cetera, that are more relevant to your particular business department, whatever. So great questions, and thanks for tackling them, Chris. So by way of kind of wrap up, see this in action, right? I think we tried to succinctly describe it. Seeing it though play out, diving in, drilling in from high level data down to actual conversations and sort of seeing how that looks is super impactful, right? And to be able to understand it and further see where that could work in your organization. So hit us up, let's do a demo, let's talk further about it. Here's the multiple ways you can jump in, request a demo, connect with us to do so. We've got a lot of resources on this that we're constantly putting out. And so happy to do a discussion, talk about use cases in your environment, show you conversation analytics in real time. So thanks so much for tuning in. Chris, thanks for doing a great job of walking through the content. Hope everyone has a great day. Take care.